Welcome to the new series of Speak Up, the television and social media platform for Freemasonry in New Zealand. I am Barry Rushton, your host, and thank you for joining us this evening. Our first guest tonight is Marty RL, a man living the life while searching for his little piece of paradise in New Zealand, and along the way, cycling over some great countryside here and overseas. Following him will be our first guest from that little island below Wellington, the South Island, Di Evely, who thinks the Christchurch revival is fantastic. He's a man who is very active in the community with his lodge charity work, but also personally in amateur theatre. And speaking of charitable works, we have our regular contributor, Graham Houston, who will round out the show with what I believe will be a great charity event. One of my guests tonight, of course, is Marty. Hello, Marty RL.
Hello, Barry.
Thank you for joining us tonight, my friend.
Pleasure.
It really looks like you're living the life, my friend. Retired a couple of years ago,
yes.
Right? You've been away on some great cycle tours, motorbike tours.
Yes.
I'm dying to ask you about the Tour de Africa, or Afrique,
Afrique.
And also, too, I know you're going to be going on one shortly, I believe, the New Zealand one, right?
The Charitable Trail.
You can tell me about that later, right? But before we get into that, I've been also dying to ask you about your time with the Skyhawks back in the 80s. I was in Palmerston North, and I remember going out to that, and I remember the Skyhawks. They were fabulous. Tell us about them. I'm excited.
Well, I joined the Air Force straight out of school uniform, and from there, I was one of my postings was to 75 Squadron, and to go on the strike wing and be on the 75 Squadron was fantastic. As a young 19-year-old, we actually deployed overseas with the Skyhawks to Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Australia, on a number of occasions.
And you would have been, what, about 1920?
1920, yeah.
1920, of age?
Yes.
Marvellous. Jump back a little bit now. You spent you went to Rarotonga when you were about 10, right? Because your dad was assigned, or he chose a post as a principal of the college over there, or the school over there.
School
right?
over there, yes.
So you spent 3 years in Rarotonga. Can you remember, what were some of the things you can remember?
Vividly, and I've been back to Rarotonga since then too. Look, I was from 9 till 12, I lived in Rarotonga as a young boy, and it was just a magical island to live over there. Dad was the principal of the only English-speaking school on the island, and that wasn't always the best, because if you got into trouble at school, you normally got into trouble when you got home too. Yeah. We used to go sailing in Muri Lagoon as a young boy, swimming down in Black Rock. It was a beautiful, fantastic thing. And then we came back from Rarotonga back to Wellington to settle down.
Ouch, that's a big change, isn't it?
From 30 degrees to 13 degrees.
And the wind and everything. Wow, it must have been just so idyllic over there. I mean, I'm dying to go. I've never been. I'd love to get there.
Everything happens in island style over there. Yeah, island time.
Now, you did the usual things, right? You got married. You had a couple of lovely daughters.
Yes.
Okay? Had a great high-powered job at Datacom, right? And then about 2 years ago, you retired, and now you're doing these great cycle tours and cycle marathons and things like that.
Yes, yeah. Well, I got out of. I spent really the last 40 years working, because I started working when I was 14, carrying boxes of computer paper as an after-school job, and I've been working ever since, all my life. So I decided that I wanted to retire at the age of 54, and I committed to that date. And so for the last 2 years, we've been preparing, and in May this year, my wife and I, we left and to start our tour around New Zealand.
Beautiful. Just to find this little spot that you might sort of settle in.
Well, we're looking for our piece of paradise here in Aotearoa. So
I bet but I know you're in a great place as we speak, not necessarily the studio, but I'm talking about where you came down from to be here tonight.
Yeah, I came down from Waipu Cove. We're currently farm sitting for some people who have gone back to the US for 2 months. And an opportunity just arose, so we said to my wife, Caroline, why not? Let's go and do this.
Gorgeous. Yeah. So why did you suddenly have a passion for, say, pedal cycles? And I know you've got motorbikes as well, but most of it's to cycle. You're into the cycling, aren't you?
I've never been into cycling really, but one of my mates bet me. He said, there's no way you could do Lake Taupo Cycle Challenge. And so I'm always up for a good challenge, and sure enough, I went down and did the Marlborough Grape Ride as my first preliminary ride. And
that would be my one, I think. That's where that's the one I'd want to do, if any.
Yeah, that was only 100 k's round the round Marlborough.
I'd be last back because I'd be sort of in the vineyards for some time.
Yeah, and then effectively built up through that and got up to doing the Lake Taupo Cycle Challenge. And I've done that 6 times now.
I've heard that. Still, I mean, doesn't compare, I'm sure, to the one that I'm really dying to ask you about. This is the actual cycle tour that goes from Cairo I think, all the way down the eastern side of Africa, right, and then cuts off to Cape Town. Is that correct?
Into
Goes
Cape
through
Town,
about
that's right.
11 different countries, depending on which war's on, to avoid certain country. You did that in, I think it was January last year, is that correct?
That's right, yeah. January I left Wellington to head over and do the Tour d'Afrique. It was an awesome challenge to do. Again, another mate sowed the seed of going and doing this adventure cycle through Africa. And I thought, why not? So everything I've been doing really since I retired was preparing for that and getting things ready. And to do that cycle tour, 12,000 kilometres from Cairo to Cape Town, and the adventures along the way, 11 different countries to go through.
4 months too, isn't it?
It's 4 months.
4 months.
In 4 months to cover that distance.
Wow.
So typically we're cycling anywhere between 60 k's to 200 k's a day, and it's day after day after day.
And do you then have to sort of pitch camp, or does someone do that for you along the way?
No. So you
get
take
a meal cooked for you or anything like that?
All meals are provided.
Oh, true.
for
I
you.
take that back. Okay.
So effectively, you take your own bike, you take your own tent, your own sleeping bag, you take all your own gear. Effectively, what they do is they provide the transport for transporting your equipment from campsite to campsite, and looking after you along the way.
Terrific.
Yes.
So obviously to do that, there's a cost. Apart from getting there, right?
Yes.
I believe if you're on the road or for 4 months and people are there, that must be a fairly expensive little operation, I'm picking.
Oh, it is, yes, but well worth it. The adventure is of getting out there to go through, starting in the Muslim north in Cairo and coming down through Sudan, through Ethiopia, Kenya, Zimbabwe.
You would have seen some beautiful sights and some. I mean, it just would have been. How many people generally go on that tour?
Typically, there's around about 25 people will do the full tour from end to end, and then there's about another 5 to 6 people who will do various sections. There's 10 sections, 10 stages throughout the tour.
Now you're gearing up, right, to do one from Cape Reinga to the Bluff.
That's it.
Again, that sounds like a beauty too, right?
Yeah, well, we're currently on our way up to Cape Reinga, and that's where the Te Araroa Trail starts from. And this is a walking trail that runs effectively the length of New Zealand, 3,000 kilometres. And it covers both road walking to mountain climbing, going over passes, kayaking, swimming, all the way down.
So how long did that take you think? How long are you planning for?
A lot of international visitors come over and do this, and my intention, they will typically take around about 6 months, 3 months in each island. And my intention is to do it over the next 2 years while my wife and I travel around New Zealand, finding our piece of paradise and just doing it in stage by stage.
Beautiful. Now, I know that your father and your 2 grandfathers, right, were both Freemasons.
Yes.
Correct? And I think back perhaps about eight so years ago, you actually went back to Ireland to locate, I think it was the lodge or the town that your grandfather was.
Yes.
Now, that must, again, tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, look, my wife and I travelled back to Ireland where I was fortunate enough to go and visit the Balahi Temperance Lodge, number 291, Irish Constitution. And this is in a little township called Knocklochran in Northern Ireland. And I was able to go back and actually see where the farmhouse where my grandfather was born in, and being able to actually trace some of the history of the RL family, to the point that we were also able to going into the lodge room and where he had been and have a look at the attendance register and actually witnessing and seeing his name documented in for both his initiation, his passing and raising, his 3 ceremonies.
That must have been a feeling that it would be hard to describe, I imagine. It would just be something special.
Actually, while I've been travelling and touring, I've been to lodges in Hawaii, in Boston, in Kenya, in Bermuda, of all places. So wherever I go touring, I always try and get to a lodge room, a lodge meeting if they're available. We're up in Waipu Cove at the moment. My intention is to get through to Whangarei. Yes.
So Marty, if you'll bump into some young people from time to time, and they may say, "Oh, gee, what's Freemasonry?" What sort of things would you say to them to say, "Hey, you should take an interest in and find out a bit more about Freemasonry"? What's the sort of thing you would want them to know?
What I'd want them to know is that Freemasonry is becoming a modern society of a modern fraternity, actually, of men with ancient traditions which are still well observed and respected. And for young guys to be able to join that and have the opportunity to experience the wealth and experience and knowledge of the other brethren and other men within the craft. And Westminster Lodge, we've recently initiated an 18-year-old young man who's just joined our lodge.
Great. You guys meet in a boutique hotel. It's called the Winchester?
Wellesley Boutique
Wellesley
Hotel.
Boutique Hotel.
Yes.
Now that must be sort of fun, because I went online and had a look at it, and it's really a quaint little old pub.
It's a 1920s Georgian styled hotel.
So do they clear out one of the function rooms for you, and then you bring all the
no, effectively we've got a purpose-built lodge room in there.
Bam.
So the actual building is now owned exclusively by Freemasons of Westminster Lodge.
True.
So it's a continuing operation as a 13-bedroom boutique hotel. It's got a functions business and cafe business running in there to continue to be able to fund us having a purpose-built lodge room in there.
Fantastic. You know, I think we should, before we wind up our little interview here, we should probably give a bit of a shout out to your new master, Wishful Master Terry Wellington. Correct?
Yes, that's right.
He's only been in about a week, or even slightly less. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
that's
He's
right.
there. So I think we should do that. You should do it to camera. So
Right, to all the brothers down in Westminster Lodge. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for the installation, but I got invited to come up here and do this.
And we're glad you did, mate. And all the best with your tours and all the things you're doing. Maybe
Thanks,
next
Barry.
season you can come back on again and we'll have a chat about some of the others, okay?
Look forward to
All
it.
the best.
Bye for now.
Thank you. My guest tonight is Di Evely. Nice to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Barry.
Now, you're from... Last year, we had a series, and most of our guests, if not all of them, came from the Auckland. I think you're our first guest from the South Island. Now, I'm a bit unsure where the South Island is. Whereabouts is the South Island I keep hearing about?
Barry, it's a great division. It's the whole of the South Island, but I'm from Christchurch. Yeah.
Mate, welcome. Welcome from Wigram, I believe, right?
Yes.
Wigram, yes. The South Island. It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Gorgeous. And this time of the year, all the blossom is out in
Please,
Christchurch.
really.
And
Oh, you're selling it. You're selling it to me. I do know that I've spent a bit of time years ago down in the central Otago area.
Wonderful.
And can that be any better place than that area? It's just gorgeous.
Wonderful.
Now, I do know that that down there they do a lot of dirt bike riding, and there's something that I know that you do, which is called the Butt Trail or something.
The Dusty Butt.
The Dusty Butt.
Yeah.
Okay, the Dusty Butt.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about the Dusty Butt.
Sure, it's adventure riding, and it takes all the four-wheel drive tracks and the dirt tracks and farm tracks throughout the South Island. Starts in Fairlie and makes its way down to Alexandra. It's a 3-day motorbike riding event, and it's just wonderful. You go through some crazy areas. I got stuck one year, and some years you get a flat tyre and you need your mates to help you out, and it's just a great weekend of adventure riding.
So it's over 3 days?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And so is it... Obviously, it's planned and organised, right? So you reach somewhere and you stay in a farmer's wool shed or something like that. Is that what happens?
Yeah, so when we start in Fairlie, we normally get up at about 5 a.m. to start the ride, and we normally finish in Alexandra at about 7 p.m. that night. And then the next day is the same situation over. It's 1,500 kilometres in total.
In total, beautiful. Yeah. And so this is set each year at a particular time?
Usually in
weekend?
February.
February, okay,
Yep.
beautiful time. Beautiful. And lots of people?
Yes, I think there's 1,000 people that take part in the event.
All on either quad bikes or dirt bikes?
We're mainly on road-going adventure bikes.
Okay.
Some of the areas go through the tar sealed area, and of course we need to fill up every once in a while, so we need to head into the towns and get some petrol.
But so you don't come from a farming background at all, right? You come from a finance background.
That's right, yes. So I'm a financial advisor,
Right.
And I mainly specialise in UK pension transfers.
That's sort of interesting because it's something that hits the news from time to time. You know, either people can't get their money transferred or that doesn't seem right. So, in simple terms, just give us how does that whole thing work?
Sure. So New Zealand has a large population of ex-UK migrants, and the situation is that often they want to bring their UK pension across to New Zealand or their retirement savings. So it can be quite technical. So we help them with that.
I hate to admit this, But actually, I collect a pension. And so it's 65 in New Zealand, age 65 in New Zealand. Is there an age, what's the age limit in England? Is it similar?
67, so it's actually a
67.
bit higher.
Okay.
Yes.
And I sort of regard, maybe a bit unfair to say that, but I think that our New Zealand pension is actually really fairly generous in the sense, I mean, a lot of pensioners might say it's not, but it seems to be pretty good. Is it similar in the UK?
The UK is a bit lower. It's about £100 a week for the
Wow.
state pension, which is about 200 New Zealand dollars. So
Yeah.
it's quite a bit less than what a New Zealander would receive in their retirement.
So now, you're in Wigram, right? So you've been in the South Island for all that time. What was happening when the big shake? Where were you when that happened?
Oh, the earthquake, sure. So I was on the 8th floor of the Forsyth Bar building, which is an 18-floor or story building, and it was quite a shock on the day. In fact, the building that I was in, the stairs collapsed, so we couldn't exit the building until they broke a window on the 8th floor and took us out by cherry picker.
You're kidding. Obviously not. I mean, you wouldn't kid that. I know
No.
that. Is that a fact? So the stairs just crumbled, did they?
Yeah, it was
Or
one
dropped
of
down
the
each other?
buildings where the stairs just pancaked and fell, and it left the people within the building no way to escape.
And nobody was on those stairs?
No, thankfully.
Thankfully, that's great. So out the window, cherry picker, and down you go.
Yeah,
That is
amazing.
Amazing, right? A lot of work still to be done in Christchurch, correct?
There is a lot of work to be done. You're obviously from Auckland, Barry.
Yes.
There is still a lot of work to be done. But having said that, it's a wonderful time down in Christchurch at the moment.
Right.
There's a lot of regeneration going on, and with the spring coming through, there's a lot of positive momentum in Christchurch.
You see, now finance and sort of accountancy, you know,
Yes.
they seem to get, in my view, a bit of a bad rap, you know, because it's like Monty Python would say that he wrote a book that said why accountancy is not boring, which is, you know, but in actual fact, you being involved in finance, there's a side of you that's actually not boring at all, right? I mean, you've been involved in a lot of amateur theatre.
I have, yes.
So obviously you love it.
Yes.
Is it a slight escape? Is it sort of like a second die sort of coming out of you somewhere?
It is. It's that performance side of me that
Yeah,
I really enjoy, and yes, I thoroughly enjoy amateur theatre.
Song and dance, or is it just acting? Is it plays? Tell me, is it a bit of both?
It's mostly acting. I'm not much of a singer, Barry. Yeah.
So you'll take on a character and away you go and have a run of 4 or 5 days or more?
Usually over 2 weeks, but my preferred acting is around children's theatre. You see the joy on the children's faces when you're doing a nursery rhyme or a little play and a character. It's always great fun.
Fantastic. And what was the motivating factor? Was there anybody in your family that was a Freemason, or your grandfather or something? What triggered you to say, this is it, I'm going to join?
Well, I didn't actually know anything about Freemasonry, and it wasn't until someone said to me, have you ever thought about being a Freemason? For me, it took me 12 months to decide, and part of that was having come back from overseas. A lot of my friends had gone off to do their own thing, so for me it became a bit of a social circle, and then over time I've found different aspects.
There's lots to it.
It's multi-layered, isn't it?
Yeah.
As you go through, you learn different things, whether it's learning a charge and then the meaning of that charge and then how to deliver the charge. There's so many different aspects that I thoroughly enjoy.
Your lodge, the Crown Lodge, and in fact I think even the Brethren in Christchurch, due to certain circumstances as well, have been really involved in a lot of charitable work. That I do know, right? I also believe that yourself, you've been a past chairman of the Canterbury Masonic Charitable Trust, correct?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about some of the work that either your lodge has been doing or the area has been doing in that charitable field.
Charity is wonderful. There's always a lot happening, but over the last couple of years, our district, that's the Canterbury District number 25, we've been involved in netball car parking.
Okay.
So we found a car park that was close to the netball centre, and if you've been to Christchurch, you would know that parking in the sports areas can be very difficult. So we were able to secure a 4-storey parking building. We charge $2 for the parkers to turn up. They go off and play their netball. And as Freemasons, we're able to raise a bit of money for charity.
Great.
Oh, can I show you this, Barry?
Absolutely.
Yep, so this is the high-vis vest that we've been wearing. And you'll see up here that we've got the Freemasons logo. And what we find is that people see this, and it's all part of our speaking up for Freemasonry. And it just shows that we're out in the community doing good things.
Which is great. And I believe the community over this relatively short period of time, I don't quite know exactly the length, but you've contributed, I think it's over $44,000 to certain events with the help of the Freemason charity as well.
Yes.
So the Speak Up campaign, I mean, it's launched by the current Grand Master who has just about served his 3-year term.
Yes.
I think it's been a great success.
My personal view, I think it's been a fantastic success. It's almost permission from the Grand Master to talk about Freemasonry. We all know for a long period of time it was kept hush-hush. We didn't talk enough about it. So certainly I think the Speak Up campaign's been a fantastic success.
Di, thank you for making the trip up, mate, from Christchurch, from Rickham. It is great to have you here, and we appreciate you being, I think, our first guest from that other island that's somewhere below Wellington.
You'll have to invite more of us, Barry.
We will indeed. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And rounding out the show, of course, is our regular contributor, Graham. Nice to see you, mate, Graham.
Hi, Barry.
Now, our viewers know that last year when we had our series, you used to cover, in fact, you only covered sort of famous Freemasons, and of course they were all deceased. This season, we're actually covering places, events, and perhaps even some living Freemasons, right? Some characters. So what have you got for us tonight?
Barry, tonight is talking to you about a charity. One of the great hallmarks of Freemasonry is its charitable works. People are familiar with some of the charities we're involved in on a national basis, but this is a charity organised by a local district out in the counties area, and it's now called Freemasons Hospice Trust, Charitable Trust. It was created back in 1990, so let me tell you about that trust. A past Grand Master, Ian Ross, was on the board of the South Auckland Hospice Trust. He struggled with the fact that there was never enough money, as all hospices will tell you, that there's just not enough money. And he thought that the establishment of a fund whereby things like training of staff, which they couldn't even consider, would be undertaken. So in 1990, he not only thought about the creation of a large fund, he wanted $1 million fund. So at that time, he and his brother Jimmy were creating and developing a subdivision which became known as Karaka Harbourside. Okay. And they donated a section to the Freemasons. But rather than just have that section sold and give the money to this new trust they were creating for the hospice, they decided to build a house. And so a house was to be built on that site, but it had to be built for nothing.
Okay, yeah, good.
And so Ian and a few others went about talking to a lot of businesses. And there were over 160 businesses who willingly contributed to the building of this house. So the house was built. It was built fully furnished, right down to the cups and saucers and the linen. Even the lawnmower was in there as well. And the house was auctioned. It was auctioned, and even the real estate company, Harcourts, donated all the auction time. So it was sold for $840,000, and that $840,000 went into the charitable trust for the hospice. But it still wasn't $1 million. So again, Ian Ross organised a $100,000 boat, and that was donated to the cause. And rather than just sell the boat, it was raffled. And so it was put on a trailer, and a number of guys travelled around the upper North Island selling raffle tickets. And eventually the boat was drawn, and $110,000 went into the charitable trust.
I spent a bit of time selling raffle tickets in Takapuna. And I remember the boat. The boat was there, yes. And I remember it.
We all had our share of selling those raffle tickets. Now, that took the trust to around about $960,000. Still not the $1 million. So now comes another idea. And the idea is to give a boat or give a motor car. The idea behind this is for when somebody in hospice passes away and the family decide that maybe there was a car, maybe there was a boat that they no longer need or they would like to donate, there is a registered company now set with an 0800 number that they can dial in and say, we have a car, we have a boat, anywhere in New Zealand, and the Freemasons will pick up that car or boat and arrange for it to be sold. Now, this 100% of the funds go into the trust. There is nothing that comes out by way of expenses for travel or anything else like that. It has to be totally voluntary. And so that will take the fund. That starts in November of this year.
Oh, okay.
And there'll be signs appearing on roadsides throughout New Zealand from that time onwards. And so that'll take the fund to over $1 million. And already contributions have been made to help the establishment of this particular part of the trust.
There's probably no organisation better than hospice at what they do and what they mean at the time of need. They are such an incredible group of people.
Well, it is such an incredible organisation, and the work they do is tremendous. And it is kind of sad. It is not kind of sad. It is really sad.
It is sad, yeah.
That they have to go to the lengths they have to go to raise that money to make it work. Now, this trust was originally set up in the county's area for the South Auckland hospice, but because of the needs of all hospices throughout the country, it has been the focus has been changed now, and it's for all hospices. That's why the name changed to become the Freemason Hospice Charitable Trust. And you see, these things happen on a local basis. These things happen by people doing great things in their local communities, often unseen, often unheard of.
And it grows, right?
And it grows.
The generosity of some people.
And the generosity of people.
And also to the effort of a lot of people.
That's
Very good choice, Graham. Nice one, mate.
Thanks, Barry.
Very good. Good on you, mate. I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show for this week. Don't forget, if you'd like to know more about Freemasonry, and you won't find it in a Dan Brown's book, but you will by going to the Grand Lodge website, which is freemasonsnz.org. In the meantime, if you've been thinking, planning, or asking questions about joining Freemasonry, we have a website for this very purpose. It's simply welcometofreemasonry.co.nz. We hold a regular dinner experience where you can meet other Freemasons before making a decision to join. So once again, thanks for joining us. See you next week.